The gate was just the beginning. Once I cut through that lock, I had no idea the storm I was unleashing. Dolores Langley wasn't just some petty HOA president. She was a master manipulator, and I had just stepped into her web. The moment I held up that snap padlock, I knew I'd crossed a line. But I also knew, deep down, that I'd uncovered something much darker than a locked gate. Dolores wasn't just trying to keep rules. She was building a fortress of lies and corruption, and I had just started pulling at the threads. I watched her face twist with shock and fury as the police arrived. She tried to hold her composure, but her hands trembled slightly as the officers approached. I could see her eyes darting, calculating her next move, knowing she'd been caught. Her assistant hovered nervously, her eyes flickering between Dolores and the growing crowd of neighbors gathering behind me. Officer Ramirez, a steady presence, looked at the broken lock and then at me. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice calm but firm. I took a deep breath. She trespassed, destroyed my property, and illegally cut my lock. This isn't HOA business. This is my land, and she had no right to be here. Dolores's face paled, but she recovered quickly. "This is a misunderstanding," she hissed, voice sharp. "We're responding to community concerns." "Community concerns," I interrupted, voice steady, "or her personal agenda." That was a moment the second twisted, because behind her, I saw her assistant slip a folded paper into her pocket. A subtle, secretive move. I caught her glance and felt a cold spike of suspicion. As the officers began taking her statement, I kept my eyes on that assistant. Something about her was off, too nervous, too quick to look away. I wondered what she knew that Dolores didn't want me to see. Meanwhile, Detective Langston arrived, clutching a folder thick with evidence. His eyes swept over Dolores, then settled on me. "You got proof of ownership?" he asked. I nodded, holding up a folder. "Deed, survey, zoning change, everything's here." She had no legal right to do what she did. Langston flipped through the documents, then looked at Dolores. "You entered private land without permission, cut a lock, and then," he paused, "falsified documents to try to justify it." Dolores's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's a misunderstanding," she repeated, voice trembling. But her words sounded hollow. "Because I had something else, something I hadn't shown yet." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, flipping to the footage from my security camera. The neighbors around us leaned in, their curiosity thickening the air. I pressed play. The screen showed her approaching the gate, pulling out bolt cutters, and cutting the lock. Her voice, clear as day, saying, "We'll just say it was unlatched," echoed through the quiet street. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dolores's face drained of color as the footage played. "Is this enough evidence?" I asked, voice low but commanding. Langston nodded slowly. "It's damning, especially combined with the forged documents and the witness statements." That's when the real shocker came, because I remembered the suspicious paper she'd tried to hide earlier. The forged permit for my land, submitted weeks before she cut my lock, was now the smoking gun. It wasn't just trespass, it was attempted theft of my property. The courtroom was packed the next day. Neighbors filled every seat, their faces tense but determined. Dolores sat stiffly, her lawyer whispering hurriedly. But her facade cracked when the prosecution laid out the evidence. The fake citations, the forged permit, the secret LLC bank account under her name, siphoning funds from the HOA. Her attempt to spin herself as a misunderstood reformer crumbled under cross-examination. Jenna, Vince, and I testified, each piece fitting together like a jigsaw of corruption. When the judge finally delivered the verdict, guilty on all counts, Dolores's face was a mask of shock. She had expected to bluff her way out, to play the victim. Instead, she was sentenced to years in prison, the weight of her lies finally catching up to her. As she was led away, I felt a strange sense of release. The neighborhood, once suffocated by her reign, was finally breathing again. People started talking, sharing stories, rebuilding trust. But Dolores's influence wasn't gone yet. That night, I found the threatening letter in my mailbox, an anonymous note warning me to back off. It was a clear message. She wasn't finished. Her silence was her last weapon, and now she was trying to strike from the shadows. And I knew I had to stay vigilant. Because sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought with locks or lawsuits. They are fraught with secrets, lies, and the courage to stand firm. Dolores was down, but her shadow still loomed. And I was ready for the next chapter. I didn't wait. As soon as I saw her face change, the sudden flicker of panic and disbelief, I knew Dolores Langley was done playing her game. I whipped out my phone and hit record. The footage played on the small screen, her approaching the gate, bowl cutters in hand, her lips moving as she justified her actions. "We'll just say it was unlatched," she whispered, as if that tiny lie could somehow erase what she'd done. But the proof was there, crystal clear. She froze when she saw the screen. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape that wasn't there. The crowd behind me had grown, neighbors, friends, some I barely recognized, all watching her stumble. The police officers, stoic and unyielding, stepped closer. Ramirez looked at her with tired eyes. "You're trespassing, cutting locks, forging documents. You're under arrest," he said simply. Her face flickered with rage, then hopelessness. She tried to speak, but words failed her. Instead, she clenched her fists, eyes burning with fury. Her assistant, wiry, nervy, and clearly out of her depth, started backing away, glancing nervously at the crowd. I noticed her hand slipping into her pocket again, clutching something small and shiny. "Hey," I called out sharply. "What are you hiding?" She whipped her head around, trying to pretend she hadn't been caught. But her trembling hands betrayed her. Whatever she was clutching, I knew it wasn't good. The crowd started murmuring, sensing the shift in the air. The police moved in, cuffing Dolores with a quiet efficiency. No drama, no fuss. Just cold, deliberate. As she was led toward the squad car, I caught her eyes. For a second, they flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Fear? Defiance? It didn't matter. She was done. Behind her, her assistant was still lingering, her face pale. She looked like she wanted to say something, perhaps a plea, perhaps an apology, but she stayed silent, knowing she was next as she stepped out of line. I stayed rooted, watching her retreat, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. This wasn't just about the gate anymore. It was about everything she'd hidden, everything she'd stolen. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispers filling the air. I folded my arms, watching the police load her into the car, my mind racing. That secret she tried to hide, the forged permit, the fake LLC account, those were just the surface. I knew this was only the beginning. Dolores's empire of lies had cracks, and I intended to break through every single one. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a new message, a text from Reena Patel, the city investigator. "We're moving fast. Evidence is solid. Expect charges soon." I exhaled slowly, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. The fight wasn't over yet. In fact, it was only just beginning. As the police drove away with Dolores, I looked around at the neighbors still lingering. Some nodded at me, others just stared, silent and thoughtful. I knew they were processing everything, the lies, the betrayal, the corruption. But they weren't just watching anymore. They were listening, watching the old lies crumble and listening to the truth finally rise. I turned back toward my house, heart pounding. I had one last thing to do before I could breathe again. I reached into my toolbox, pulled out the old lock I'd kept as a reminder, and replaced it with a new one, stronger, smarter. I programmed a keypad, set it to a code only I knew. This gate, my land, my home, no more secrets. No more lies. No more games. But I knew Dolores wouldn't stay quiet for long. Even in her silence, her threats lingered. Someone had sent that anonymous note, the one telling me to back off, to stop digging. I felt its weight pressing down, cold and heavy. Whoever it was, I didn't trust them. Maybe it was her, maybe someone else hiding in the shadows. And I was ready for whatever came next. Because sometimes the battle isn't won with a lock or a lawsuit. It's won with courage, by standing tall and refusing to be silenced. I looked up at the sky, darkening with the coming night. The storm was over for now, but I knew better than to think it was truly finished. Dolores's shadow had been cast long and deep, and even now, I could feel it lurking in the corners of my mind. The real fight was just beginning. I didn't hesitate. The moment I saw her face drain of color, the shock and disbelief, and noticed her assistant slipping something into her pocket, I knew I had to act fast. Without a second thought, I pressed play on the footage on my phone. The image was clear. Dolores, bolt cutters in hand, hacking through the lock, her lips whispering. We'll just say it was unlatched. The crowd behind me gasped, eyes wide with shock. Officer Ramirez stepped closer, eyes fixed on her trembling figure. What's going on here? He asked, voice steady. She trespassed. I said, voice firm. She cut my lock, entered my property illegally, and tried to cover it up with lies. This is an HOA business. It's a crime. Dolores's mouth opened to protest, but no words came out. Her face flickered with fury, then panic. Her assistant, nervy and quick, was still slipping something into her pocket. Something shiny, small. I caught her glance. My stomach clenched. Look, I said loudly. There's footage. Proof she was here, breaking and entering, and then forging documents to justify it. I held up my phone, the video playing on the screen. Her face went pale as she watched herself cut the lock and whisper her lie. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some neighbors started recording on their phones. Ramirez looked at her, then at me. This is serious. Trespassing, vandalism, forgery, he said, voice low but authoritative. We're placing her under arrest. Her eyes flashed with rage, then helplessness. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Her assistant, still lurking nervously, was now edging away, clutching her own small object. I saw her hand tremble, clutching something metallic, probably what she'd slipped into her pocket. Hey, I called out sharply. What are you hiding? She froze, her face a mask of panic. Her eyes darted. Then she made a break for her purse, trying to pull something out. I tensed, ready for whatever it was. Ramirez stepped in, grabbing her arm. Stop right there, he ordered. Suddenly, a loud metallic clink echoed. Her hand had dropped a tiny key. A key that looked suspiciously like the one I'd seen in her pocket earlier. I lunged forward, grabbing it from the ground. She struggled, but Ramirez's grip was firm. Is this what I think it is? I demanded, holding up the key. Her face twisted, a mix of rage and defeat. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I interrupted. This is a key to a lock you're not authorized to open. And this, I held up the forge permit for my yard, is evidence you tried to steal my property. You've been forging documents, siphoning funds, all to serve your own greed. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Behind us, her assistant looked like she might bolt, but the police were already taking her into custody, cuffing her with cold efficiency. She didn't resist, just stared ahead, defeated. As she was led away, her assistant finally spoke, voice trembling. I didn't know she was doing all this. I just followed orders. Ramirez looked at her, then at the crowd. Anyone else involved? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded, eyes downcast. There's more. Dolores. She's been lying about everything. About the HOA, about the community, even about her own past. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a gate. It was about a woman who had built her entire empire on lies, manipulation, and theft. And I had just pulled the plug. But the real shock came when I checked my phone later. A new message from an unknown number. Asterisk, you think this is over? Think again. You've only seen the surface. There's more beneath. Asterisk. A chill ran down my spine. The game wasn't just lost. It was only just beginning. Dolores had been hiding something far darker, something I hadn't even begun to uncover. And I knew that no matter how much I fought, she wasn't finished yet. Not with a secret she'd kept buried, not with the power she still wielded behind her lies. Because the truth, I realized, isn't always what's on the surface. Sometimes, the deepest secrets hide behind the most innocent masks. And the scariest lies are the ones we never see coming.